Welcome to chapel today. We have today some follow-up from what Brenda Yoder spoke about on Monday, talking about mental illness and ways to work with that. So Mark is going to share and Caleb is going to share with us today about that. But that's like you can.
So we would like to continue on from some of the themes from Monday's chapel. As we said, Monday we had Brenda Yoder here, and she introduced the topic of mental health and ways of dealing with that. One of the activity that she had us do was to list some of our strengths and some of our weaknesses, or lesser strengths, and then to consider ourselves as a whole. We have both of those features as part of who we are. On Tuesday, in small groups, then you discuss some of those strengths and lesser strengths, probably sharing somewhat differently from group to group. Our aim today is to continue this discussion, and we would like to provide some personal sides to mental health and some practical sides to dealing with mental health issues. Both Caleb and I have had issues with mental health in the past. And we'd like to tell you just a little bit about that today. First, it might be useful to have a working definition for mental health. What is a healthy mental state? I speak to a therapist, I talked with her last night, and we were discussing some of these concepts, some of these definitions. So a working definition for good mental health can be participating in life the way that you want to be able to participate. For most people, there isn't a problem with this. You're mentally healthy. You're able to engage in life the way that you really want to. For some, however, there are issues that arise with your mental health. That is, you cannot participate in life the way that you want to participate. There's a very real difference between not being depressed and being depressed, and how you're able to engage with the world. For some people who have issues with mental health, this is a continuous and a persistent problem that you struggle with every day. For others, it comes in waves, where there are ups and there are downs. But in those downs, you can't participate in life the way that you'd like. For some people, mental health issues arise, come and go with the seasons. Change in seasons, with temperature, with amount of sunlight, can affect your mental health. Still, for others, mental health can be affected by traumatic events, and depressive episodes can be triggered by traumatic events in life. For me, I've had issues with mental health going back to middle school. And for me, it's one of these things that comes in waves. So when I say that I'm anxious or depressed, it doesn't mean that I have depression every hour of every day. It does mean that I know that there are times of the year or times of life when I won't be able to participate in life the way that I want to. I can't engage with the world in a way that's fully functional. I know that I will be depressed throughout the year. For me, I've taken many steps to try to deal with this. And at the end of chapel today, we'd like to provide all of you with different ways of thinking about how you can be mentally healthy, and how you can advocate for friends who have issues with mental health. One of the things that we hope to do by talking about this is to just normalize these issues, to not have them off in some corner that we don't talk about. They're a lot better when we can just be up front and open about what we're going through. One of the things that I mentioned I find helpful is talking with a mental health professional, talking with a therapist, and then following the advice that she gives. And at the end of chapel, go through some of the advice that I've had over the years. So in trying to normalize some of these issues, Caleb would like to share some of his personal story with mental health and well-being. So I'll sit down now and pass it off to Caleb.
Hello. Hi. Thanks, Mike. If you don't know who I am Caleb Gingerich. I'm a senior here, and I have had issues with
depression and anxiety. I first remember feeling depressed sometime in the 8th grade. I had been in middle school for 2 years already, and I hated it. I myself wasn't really bullied at school, so that's not where my depression stemmed from. At the time, I really had no idea why I was feeling the way I was. Looking back now, I think I was struggling with anxiety. I was stressing over things such as the obvious, like grades and fitting in socially, and of course, girls. One thing that really bothered me then was my classmates. Many of my previous classmates were plain rude and bullies. For me, that really set the mood of the year. Fortunately for me, middle school did end. Unfortunately for me, I didn't realize how much I would dislike high school. My initial transition from middle school to high school wasn't too bad. I still didn't like school, but not many kids did. Freshman year was probably the best year of high school in terms of my mood, however, I was still struggling with anxiety. I did finish the year with a 4.0, but I stressed over my grades in an unhealthy fashion. When some kids feel overly stressed or depressed, they self-medicate with drugs. I, on the other hand, turned to video games. I played online games religiously for the next 3 years. It was a competitive environment that I enjoyed. I especially enjoyed it because my older brother Eli also played. I played the game in an unhealthy amount. I became addicted to the games. I was skipping school events so I could play the games, and sometimes I was skipping school. At first glance, you might say, wow, that kid really likes video games, which I did, but the main reason I played it so much was because when I was playing it, I didn't have to think about anything but the game. I didn't have to think about school or the problems of the world. I used this game as a distraction from the real world. I was addicted to it, and this would become the pattern for the next 2 years. I feel as though freshman year was the first time in my life I started to truly observe what was going on in the world. I started to watch the news and I found myself hating the way the world works. I was angry. I was angry with how some people feel like they are better than others because the color of their skin is white. I was angry with people using their religion to justify homophobia and xenophobia. I was angry whenever people around me made sexist remarks and played them off as jokes. I remember one night, sophomore year, I came home from basketball practice, went to my room and into the closet. I crawled into a laundry basket and I cried. I didn't understand why I felt the way I did, and I knew that many people in the world had it worse off than me, which made me feel guilty for being depressed. Sophomore year sucked because it was the first year of my life that I didn't see my best friend every day. Eli had started college and had left. It sucked because I had always relied on him to keep me level-headed when I was feeling angry or sad. It took some getting used to, but I eventually moved past that. During this time was when I started to get my first severe depressive episodes. I started to lose motivation to do anything. I had no motivation to do homework, hang out with friends, and sometimes I couldn't find it in myself to get on my computer and play the games, which was my one true escape. I would spend a great deal of the year lying in bed watching random stupid YouTube videos. Some point during sophomore year, I agreed with my parents to go see a psychiatrist. I was diagnosed with clinical depression and received medication. At this point in time, I really started to question what I believed. I couldn't understand why a supposed all-powerful, all-loving God would let me hurt, along with let many other things in the world run amok. And I wasn't accepting the answers that were given to me. I began seeing a Christian family therapist, which wasn't helping, seeing as I was afraid to tell my parents about my doubts. So I went along sophomore year, missing plenty of days of school, many due to stress-induced migraines. Then along came junior year. Last year was the worst year of my life. The school year started off good. I was still struggling with video game addiction and depressive episodes, among other things, but I got cast as a big role in the school musical and I was feeling better. Then, on the first night of December, I skipped a school event to play video games as usual. I played for a couple hours, then took a break. I went upstairs and poured myself a bowl of cereal. I was about to eat it when I checked my phone. I found that Teresa Cardenas had fallen off a ladder and was seriously injured. I got together with close friends and later received the news that she had passed. I didn't know Teresa that well, and I don't feel like I have the words to do her justice. I just know that that night started downward spiral for me and many others. It didn't affect me as it did many others of you here, but it still had an impact. It didn't matter that I didn't know her well. The entire atmosphere of IMS changed. The following days sucked, and I felt extreme guilt for not going to the school party. I thought to myself, maybe if I had been there, it could have changed something. A few weeks later, I got home to hear the news that my dog, Lily, that I had known and loved for the past 9 years, had been hit by a car and was killed. I was in my own hell. I started missing 3 to 4 days of school every week. I was missing basketball practice. I started sleeping 13, 14, 15 hours every day. I barely bathed, twice a week if I was lucky. I stopped doing homework altogether, and when I did go to school, I felt like I had to pretend to be all right so I could avoid questions about how I was doing. I dreaded coming to school and hearing someone exclaim, "Hey look, he's alive," every time they saw me. I hated every moment I was awake. I cried myself to sleep some nights. But it wasn't just sadness I was feeling. I was extremely angry all the time. One night after my parents confronted me about my grades and my problems with my games, I got so angry that I locked myself in the room and started punching my closet door. I punched a hole in the door and bloodied my hand up in the process. Once basketball postseason came around and we lost the game to Golden State, I felt like I had let my teammates down. I feel like I had let my dad and brother down. Luckily for me, I have great friends. Friends such as Micah Miller, Lara Cleaver, Emma Beachy, and Adria Eversole, who would come to my house at 7:30 in the morning to eat breakfast with me and do everything they could to get me out of bed and into school. I scraped through the rest of the year, even though I was hardly at school. I barely passed junior year, and I only did because of teachers like Brian, Maya, and Marcus, who allowed me to finish up my schoolwork during the summer. This year I am doing better. I don't rely on video games to take my attention away from the world's problems. I still miss school due to migraines every once in a while, but my mood has increased tremendously. I haven't experienced a severe depressive episode yet this year. I'm not telling you all this to make you feel bad for me. I'm sharing my experience because I know that there are others in the school who suffer from mental illnesses, and I simply want to tell you that you are not alone, and it will get better no matter how cliche that sounds. Having a mental illness isn't abnormal, and if you are struggling, I urge you to find someone you are comfortable with, whether it be a close friend or even a teacher here at IMS, and talk to them. If you are a guy who is struggling with mental illness, don't feel like you need to man up. It is perfectly normal to cry and talk with others. Sometimes just talking about your problems can help a great deal. And if you don't struggle with mental illnesses, be mindful of those around you, because odds are you know someone who does. If someone approaches you, listen to them. Be your shoulder to cry. Help them any way you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. So we all have to take care of ourselves in order to engage in life. We all have to take care of ourselves in order to engage in community. We are a community here at IMS. Part of taking care of ourselves is recognizing when things in life are faltering. Right, we can make plenty of analogies for this. When you're sick, you have to take care of yourself. When you have the flu, you have to rest. You have to push fluids. You have to eat well. Maybe you have to take some medicine. But you have to do all of those things in order to feel well again. If you break your arm, you have to put your arm in a cast. When you get the cast off, well, then you have to maybe rehab your arm. Go to physical therapy to get the strength back to use your arm like you used to. So in the same way, part of taking care of ourselves is recognizing when our mental health falters and when it's not going so well. One of the exercises that Brenda Yoder had us do was to list our strengths and our lesser strengths. And part of that process is seeing yourself as a whole. Seeing yourself as a whole without judgment. Once you can do that, then you can ask yourself, what do I want to do with these parts of myself? So for the last few minutes, I have some slides. I just want to go through a few pieces of advice that I've learned over the years. Some of them adapted from Brenda Yoder and her website. Some of them adapted from advice from my own therapist. Advice for what to do if you find yourself struggling with a mental health issue, or if you know someone who is struggling with these issues. So we're just going to go through these one at a time. So first, if you are suffering from a mental health issue, at times you might need to do something to almost jumpstart your brain, to force yourself to participate back in reality. Caleb mentioned having friends come over to force him to eat breakfast and to try to get him to come to school. So one of the first things that you should do, that you should always do, is talk to friends and family and loved ones. You should be open and able to share about these things in community. All right. Another one that you definitely should do is you need to force yourself to get out of the house. Right? Your brain might be telling you to stay in bed, sleep 13 hours at a time. But if you can just force yourself to get up and get out of the house, you can help jumpstart your brain. Keep it coming cool. Right? Sunlight is important. We've had a lot of gray days lately. I don't know if you've noticed, but that affects people. Try to take in some sunlight. That can seriously affect your brain chemistry. Right? Move your body. Get some exercise. Laying in bed all day might feel like the right thing to do, but exercise can also seriously affect your brain chemistry in a positive way. Right? Eat well. What you put into your body can affect your mind. Again, food is chemistry, and the brain is also chemistry. Those things have direct effects on one another. Sorry, that's a little too sciencey. Right. Give yourself grace. Some of this has to do with not judging those thoughts that you're having for yourself. Put them in a judgment-free zone and give yourself grace to deal with those problems. And lastly, talk to a professional. I can't advocate enough for talking with a therapist. When I've experienced traumatic events in the past, and I found that talking to a mental health professional was incredibly beneficial. My advice for this, shop around. You're a customer looking for a product, and the mental health professional is someone who can help you. If you are in the market for a therapist, shop around, find someone who works for you, who you can get along with, and who you can talk to and discuss it with. All right, what happens if a friend of yours is struggling with a mental health issue? And these are adapted from one of Brenda Yoder's blog posts. You can check her blog posts out at brendayoder.com. One, recognize their issue, acknowledge it as real. Right? We'll keep going. Talk with your friends. Talk with them about them. Let them be open with you and be open with them. Empathize with their issue. Right? Acknowledge the reality of what they're going through. Right? Brenda Yoder also recommends that you put things in the context of a bigger picture. And I don't mean this glibly to just say, oh yes, well there's starving people in the rest of the world. But you can put this in context of the greater context of life. That there are other days, and that there are better days. Okay? And emphasize their strengths. And this is something Brenda Yoder had us do. Recognizing the bigger picture that we do have good qualities about us, that we do have strengths. And lastly, if necessary, get them to talk to a mental health professional. This last slide here, if you advance it, Cole, is just a map of Iowa City. And if you see all the red dots, there are nearly a dozen different mental health professionals just in the Iowa City area alone who you can contact to talk to about the issues that you may be going through. And lastly, I just want to put up here, Iowa City has, can you go back, Cole? Thanks. All right, Iowa City has a crisis center. If you're experiencing emergency mental health issues, you can call this number and they can help you. Okay, I heard the bell. Thank you all for listening. Let's close with a prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for giving us minds. Thank you for giving us minds to experience this world. We recognize that some of our minds falter sometimes. And we ask for your grace in considering those issues. Please help us to see these issues in one another and to help one another in Christian community. In your name, amen.